I thought that the Army was what I wanted to do with my whole life. I loved it. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was doing the paratrooper stuff, airborne operations, and it was a ton of fun. And then the Army was generous enough to send me to Florida State University to get an MBA. I realized that I wanted to be an investor and a businessman instead of being in the Army.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Today's guest is James Smith. James owns Schrappers Fine Cabinetry and Design in Jupiter, Florida, which he bought in August 2025 for $2.5 million. His wife, Jana, is a real estate agent and is pregnant with their first, a son due in May 2026. They also own 40 rental housing units, and prior to buying the cabinetry business, James was in the Army from 2018 to 2025. James, welcome to Business Buying for Fi. Excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. It's great. It's surreal.
Awesome. So let's just kind of I just gave a snapshot of where you sit today, but let's go back a little bit and give me your backstory, where you grew up, what got you interested in business in the first place.
Love it. Okay. Yeah. So I've always been a hardworking, ambitious person. I mowed lawns and put the money all away when I was a kid. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then I went to undergrad at a school called Claremont McKenna College in Southern California. And then I went to the Army, and I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina for a couple of years. And I thought that the Army was what I wanted to do with my whole life. I loved it. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was doing the paratrooper stuff, airborne operations, and it was a ton of fun. And then the Army was generous enough to send me to Florida State University to get an MBA. So I was doing that. I was in ROTC, and my joke is that I sort of had a quarter-life crisis because I realized that I wanted to be an investor and a businessman instead of being in the Army. And that happened when I bought a house and house hacked it. So I bought a house and I rented out one of the bedrooms to a friend of mine in the Army. And then I finally worked up the courage to buy another rental. I caught a tailwind from COVID, bought another one. This is in Tallahassee. Met my wife, Jana. We got married. We teamed up. And then we ended up with 7 units in Tallahassee. Then the Army said, all right, you owe us 3 years and you're going to spend it in Southwest Oklahoma at Fort Sill. So I was like, gosh, quarter-life crisis is in full effect. I don't want to go do this. I want to be an investor, a businessman. I caught a tailwind from COVID on these houses in Florida. So I had some equity already, which was tremendous. But, we owed the Army. So we shipped off to Lawton, Oklahoma, right outside of Fort Sill. And my wife and I just put our heads together and we set goals. And we said, we're going to get out of the Army in May of 2025. And we want to own this much real estate. We want to have this much in the bank. We want to have this much coming in by the time we get out in May of 2025. At the end of 2023, early 2024, I stumbled across the idea of buying a business. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. And my wife and I, we knew we wanted to live in Florida because obviously, and we spent the whole of 2024 learning as much as we could about buying a business. We explored the whole state of Florida. We read the books, listened to the podcasts, the content creators from people like yourself. We bought an abandoned quad and we flipped it and made $95,000 off that flip. So that was great. And my wife, Jana, is a total sweetheart. She was crushing real estate sales in this little small town in Oklahoma. And we didn't even acknowledge our means. We lived on like 10% of our means, just investing every dollar we could to set us up to be here today. So then I got out of the Army in May of 2025, and I closed this deal on Schrappers in August of 2025. And so we packed up and we moved from Oklahoma to here in Jupiter. And it's been 6 months since we closed.
Wow. Awesome. That is quite an incredible story. So the Army essentially paid for you to realize you didn't want to be in the Army anymore.
Yeah, but I've got nothing bad to say about the Army. Great decision. Love it. It really enabled Jana and I to be here today.
Yeah. It set you up on a path to where you are today. Good decision. Thank you for your service. We all appreciate it. So you you did some lawn mowing and stuff as a kid or as a younger adult. What what if anything did that impact you going to business school in the first place? Going to get your why'd you decide to get the MBA in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I just always in the back of my mind was ambitious, but never thought that I could do it. Never like knew how to get started. Never, I was just kind of like sitting on my hands thinking it'd be cool. I was buying the S&P 500 every month, and I was listening to Bigger Pockets like crazy, and other stuff like that. I always thought it would be really cool, but it wasn't until I finally had the means to buy my first house and house hack it and my first rental, and then get a tailwind from COVID that my eyebrows went up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Proof of concept. It's not just something I'm going to read about for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those those small steps start adding up quickly and start making the possibilities seem immense once they start stacking like that, which is
Absolutely.
very cool.
Very cool.
Are all of your where are your properties now?
Tallahassee, Lawton, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yes, and then we own our personal house here in
Yeah.
Jupiter.
Okay. Perfect. So you're buying real estate. It's your wife's a real estate agent, so she's getting commissions. You have your salary from the army. And what kind of did you think? I mean, was there a point where you thought, okay, I'll get out of the army in 2025 and the real estate will be enough for me? Or did you always know that you'd want more than real estate?
Yeah, we played with the idea of just going to Australia and being scuba instructors and working on a fishing charter and letting the passive income pay for our lifestyle. But no, I knew that I wanted to keep being ambitious and working hard, stay in the
Yeah.
arena.
Okay. And so you stumble across this idea, this concept of buying a small business, and in addition to real estate or instead of real estate. What about that first time that you were exposed to that idea kind of triggered in your brain that this was possible?
Great question. Well, because of my experience with real estate, I knew that I could speak bank very well, right? So I was confident in my ability to get the financing, right?
Mm.
I knew exactly what the bank was going to ask me for, and I knew that I could make a good impression on them. And then, it's, I listened to a lot of the Acquiring Minds podcast where it was guys just like me. They weren't any more sophisticated than I am or more talented or hardworking than I am that were doing it and doing well. So, and, I'm fortunate in that I've always had a little bit of extra belief in myself and confidence in myself as well. So for those three reasons, I thought that I could probably pull this off.
Probably something else the army helps instill in you as well is that belief in yourself. Not
Yeah.
that you didn't already have it, but
Yeah.
do you think being in business school played into that as well? Like being around other people that were doing business, doing big things. Is that did
No,
that play? No.
no, I'm not a school fan.
Yep.
My joke is that I would own a lot more real estate if I didn't have an MBA in real estate. So it's all about getting out there in real life and talking to people like you and learning
Yep.
from the real world.
Yeah, that's I would agree with that. I think school has its place for certain people, but I think
Yeah,
in entrepreneurship and in investing real estate, whether it's real estate or small business, getting out there and doing the thing is the best education you can get. It's
absolutely. Absolutely.
when you realize, so 23, 24, you realize you wanted to do this business thing. What was your kind of first step towards that?
Yeah, so I read, like I said, I was reading everything I could find. I was listening to every podcast that I could listen to. And I started calling brokers and just started asking them, hey, like, my name's James. This is my intent. I've got some real estate. I've got some cash. And they were really kind to me. And they would take my calls and they would talk to me for 5 to 10 minutes at a time about the process and their experience. And it was tremendous. It was wonderful. And I came away with the conclusion that the best thing I could do is just to continue to become wealthier. Like in 2024, I was trying to do things proactively, and there's, I just needed to get more liquid, make more money, have more in the bank, have stronger credit, and that was really the thing to do to be proactive.
Yeah. Do you think so? You touched on something important there. I always tell people when they're calling a broker, try to sell yourself at first.
Yeah,
Make them understand why they should talk to you.
absolutely.
What do you think it was that mention of real estate and as you said, you can speak bank,
Right.
talking the language. Did that? Do you think that's what got you those
Absolutely.
conversations? Okay, and
Yes. So I would
yeah.
send them my personal financial statement. I sent them balances, balance letters. Like, look, I'm not a tire kicker here. I'm a serious buyer. I'm qualified. I'm credible.
Yeah. What recommendation would you give to somebody that may not have the balance sheet that you had at that time to try to open doors with brokers?
I would say that you can still speak intelligently. But, like, you should still be able to portray yourself as a serious buyer even without a balance sheet, right? So, just the way you carry yourself and present yourself. I mean, just by putting together 3 slides with your headshot and a professional summary and a profile and a detailed description of what your intent is and who you are will be enough to make a good impression. You know, like, it was literally just like a one-page slide that I made with pictures of my wife and I talking about who we are and a biography and what we want to do. And it made all the difference in the world. Just a little bit of effort there to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, that's so it doesn't have to be I have millions of dollars in the bank or I own 40 properties. It's the
Right.
who you are, what skill or experience that you have in whatever job it is you've been doing to
I would also strongly recommend to be very specific with your intent. Don't say, I want to buy a business. Say, in the second quarter of next year, I want to buy a landscape business that's doing between a quarter and three-quarters of $1 million in SDE. This time I want to pay for it. This is where I want the business to be, you know. So if you're specific, people will take you more seriously as well.
That's very true. The more specific you can be, the more serious they'll take you and the more memorable you will be for that broker when something of that specific criteria pops up on their radar for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is, for me personally, I was very vague when I was searching because I didn't really care. And that made my
Ooh.
search more difficult.
Ooh.
I think it took longer because of that, because I looked at a lot more different options. And, had I gone into networking meetings with a very crystal clear criteria, like James described, I might have come across something sooner. So, if you can niche down and really be really specific like that, it will definitely help your search process.
Awesome.
Uh, so you were calling brokers locally in Oklahoma and in Florida, all over the place. What was your
Only in
geographic
Florida.
target?
Only
Okay.
in Florida. We knew that it was going to be in Florida, and we traveled to Florida just for fun and to explore and learn a couple times, and met with whichever brokers would meet with us and learn whatever we could.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
Did you run into any challenges or hurdles with brokers that didn't take you seriously because you were not in Florida, or did they understand your military circumstances and
they took me seriously, and I was honest with them. Like, at the beginning, I was really proactive, right? So I was 18 months away from closing a deal, and I was reaching out to people, and they were very kind and polite and helpful, but they said, "Okay, look, there's nothing we can do until 18 months from now." Right.
yeah. And so in your search, how did you settle in then on cabinetry and
Great
your
question. Yeah. So this is what really enabled my success is I knew exactly what I wanted. So I would definitely recommend this to the listeners, like, know what you want. So I knew I wanted to do something with luxury home improvement because I had such a good experience with the real estate investing and because my wife is a real estate agent. And then I had a certain price point in mind, based on my means. And I knew I wanted to be in Palm Beach County. I knew I wanted a lovely place to go to work every day. I knew I wanted a way to grow. I needed to be able to see a way to grow the business, right? And I needed, I forgive me, I wanted a lovely place to go to work every day. And then I needed a seller who I could trust, a seller that I could work with 40 hours a week indefinitely, right? So whenever I came across this business, the decision was easy because it checked every single one of those boxes, and I made the decision immediately. It really enabled me to be decisive.
Awesome. I like that you kind of touched on the type of business you were looking for. You already had some inherent advantage in that industry, that home services. You'd flipped homes. You've, I presume, renovated a number of those 40 units, if not all of them. You knew that industry well from working with contractors and that kind of thing. And then having your wife in real estate sales, it's almost like you have a built-in salesperson right
Mhm.
from day one as well, who
Yeah,
can help you out.
absolutely. Yeah. So I knew it could have been glass, it could have been floors, it could have been paint, it could have been anything with luxury home improvement, but I knew I wanted to be in that industry. And it just turned out to be cabinets.
Awesome. What about HVAC or plumbing or electrical? Any of those types of things? Did you look at
Yeah,
those?
I would have been open-minded to it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have been open-minded to it.
Okay. I ask because those seem to be extremely hot industries right now for a lot of people, and I, I think there's definitely, like cabinetry, like a lot of home improvement stuff, is a need for it. It's not going to get completely out. You can never completely outsource it overseas or anywhere else because you
Right.
need people locally. But one of my concerns with those industries is the technical ability and licensing issues that come up with those. But where
Yeah,
cabinetry is a little bit, I wouldn't say easier to learn, but you don't necessarily need a specific long-term license to do.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes, there's no licensing, nothing. It is a trade though, just like
Yep.
HVAC and
Yep.
electrical is a trade. Like it's high skilled labor to
Yes.
install these really nice kitchens.
Yeah. And I'm sure with nicer cabinetry, it's a more highly skilled job. So, how many employees do you have? And I guess back up a step. You you found this, it checked all the boxes. What was the next step then?
The next step was well, I saw the listing on Biz myself and I called the broker. He and I had a great call. We hopped on Zoom, talked for an hour, and then I booked a flight right there. Did not plan on it at all. Booked the flight right away. And then I set a bunch of other appointments for other businesses that were for sale. I flew over, met with a bunch of them, and then within 2 days, I wrote an offer to the seller of this business.
Wow. What was that offer? Did you utilize the broker to help you structure that offer? How did you come up with the offer?
Yeah, I just wrote a letter, an LOI, and I'm a good writer, so I think that I made a good impression on them when I wrote the letter. And then I knew I had done so many deals in real estate already, so I knew like what terms would go into the deal, and then the broker was able to take my letter and turn it into a contract.
Okay. So LOI, for those that aren't familiar, is a letter of intent, which is usually the first step in buying the business. It's kind of like an offer letter. It's non-binding, but it's kind of respected as a binding agreement until something goes wrong. The broker turned it into an actual contract, which makes it a little bit more official. Um, what what are some of the key items in an LOI, whether in yours or in general, that you think people should be aware of and should include when they're writing those letters?
Definitely priced, definitely financing structure, definitely timeline, right? Definitely earnest money. Like, are you gonna, if you write a letter that says, "All right, on Monday I'll wire $50,000 to the title company," that's what I did, and then they'll take you really seriously, right? Um, those things for sure.
Yeah. And those are all negotiable points. And those are all things that, make your letter stronger or weaker depending on what you're willing to put in there. So for James, he was willing to put up $50,000 as a deposit. I presume it had some refundable nature if due diligence didn't work out. It wasn't,
Yeah, it wasn't
completely gone.
right. But
So
just your willingness to, send $50,000 to a title
yeah,
company, really portrays credibility.
yeah. And the timeline he's talking about is the timeline to close, but also timeline that you have to do due diligence, do your investigating before that deposit turns into a non-refundable deposit. Usually there's some kind of clause that you release that due diligence period at a certain point after you receive all of the documents that you asked for and have reviewed them. And then that money usually goes hard, which means that you don't get it back if you decide to walk away after that.
That's right.
There's always still little loopholes and stipulations depending on what kind of financing you're using, if the banks back out or refuse to finance it. But ideally, you're working on those things at the same time. So you submit this LOI, turns into a contract, and it was a pretty quick due diligence period then, right? Because you closed on it very quickly as well.
Didn't close on it very quick. So this is
Okay.
actually March that I'm doing
Okay.
this. So it
Got
was 5 months under contract.
Okay.
It was a roller coaster those 5 months. Gosh, I've never, I just stared at the ceiling, just like, what is my fate here? But so it was 5 months. Yeah.
I mean, in the grand scheme of a lot of business purchases, I don't know. Did you use SBA financing or bank financing?
I did. Yes, I did. The first bank we were going to go with looked at the deal and said, I'll only do this deal on these terms. And it was unacceptable to the seller. So we actually had to go through the whole process again with another bank, which caused a big delay. And then the bank found some terms that they were happy with.
Okay. So yeah, 5 months. I mean, Florida real estate, I know, moves very quickly. I'm from New York State, where our real estate deals can take 2 months on average, even with cash purchases. So 5 months doesn't seem terrible for a business acquisition. How long was your due diligence period in that?
30 days.
Okay.
Yep. So I got access to the QuickBooks records. I got access to everything. And I looked at everything with a fine-tooth comb. And it was great. It was tremendous. The sellers were very honest, wonderful people. And we're still working together. Which was part of my, which is, again, something that enabled me to be decisive. So they didn't misrepresent anything. It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic when that happens because it makes the whole process easier. These transactions are very much based on personal relationships. I tell people all the time, if they meet the seller and they don't like them or they don't think they can work with them, it's not a deal worth trying to push through because
Totally agree.
it's just going to be an uphill battle the whole time during the process and even afterwards. So, make sure you know and like and trust the person that you're doing the deal with. What was the first time you met the seller?
It was when I flew out.
Flew out
right
the
after
first
that
time.
conversation. Yeah, and we spent 90 minutes together on a Sunday, right here in this office,
Nice.
where I now sit.
Yeah, that's cool. And presumably you felt comfortable with each other. You moved forward. You had 30 days of due diligence and you got complete access, which is great. Were you already out of the military at that point, or were you still trying to balance both?
I was out. I was on terminal leave, so I had signed out and everything. So it had my full attention.
Okay. Yeah. So you had the capacity to get it done in 30 days. And
Right.
this is one of those points in an LOI. For a lot of buyers, they feel like they need more time. 30 days can seem very quick to do a whole evaluation on a business and the opportunities and all that kind of stuff. But if you're able to dedicate full time to it, it's a stronger selling point to that seller because they don't have to wait and they don't have to find out 60 or 90 days later, you know what, that buyer's not going to move forward. So now they're back to the drawing board again.
Absolutely. Yep. Another thing that I had to do was form an LLC, and then I had to get leases signed for the 2 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to convince the landlords to write me a contingent lease. So this lease only comes into effect if the deal closes. So that's another. So I was busy. I was working hard.
Yeah. So you did an asset purchase then,
That's right.
not a stock purchase? Yeah. So James set up his new entities. Instead of just purchasing the shares or the membership interests of the old entity, he set up new entities and purchased all of the assets of this business, which as a buyer is usually something I'd recommend because it protects your liability issues. Nothing can pop up that happened years ago that all of a sudden you're on the hook for. But it presents interesting challenges like leases. I had to go through something similar when I bought my wine and liquor store, because not only the bank wanted a lease, but the SLA, the liquor authority, wanted to see a lease before they would approve me for a license. And it's, you don't want to be on the hook for a lease in your new entity name if you don't end up closing on the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. The good news about all this, though, if you're listening, is that it is so easy to present yourself well. I'm telling you, two PowerPoint slides that are like well formatted, and if you just write 3 paragraphs that don't have typos in it, you will stand out. I promise. Like just take a picture of you and your wife with your dog or your child, and like you'll it's not hard to present yourself well and make a
Yeah.
good impression.
That's very true. Pick up the phone, call the person,
Yeah,
show up well dressed and,
absolutely.
respectable.
Yeah,
It's not a
it's
huge
not hard.
challenge.
It's not
Yeah.
hard. You do
Yeah.
not have to run a marathon to make a good impression. It's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
very true. And making that good impression makes the rest of the process much easier on yourself.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Great tip there.
Yeah.
So you get the contract done, you go to the first bank, and how far along or into that process with the bank did they pull the rug out on you and demand certain terms?
Yeah, it was probably like 45 days in. Don't quote me on the due diligence number. I don't exactly remember the terms we did. Might have been 60 days. But yeah, the bank just said, no, the only way we're doing this is if the seller finances the deal and you pay him you only pay him if you're so profitable, right?
Okay.
I forget what the term earn it.
Sub
Yeah.
uh,
Performance-based seller
yeah.
financing is what they called it. And that doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're going to spend money on growing the business. Your business is doing great, but you're not showing profits. That means you don't owe the seller anything. So that was just untenable for us. So we went to another bank, and they made the seller finance money on some pretty favorable terms to me, but terms that were acceptable to the seller.
Yeah. So this is as a buyer, it's one of the nice things about working with a bank
Yes.
is they will, first of all, they're double checking all of your numbers and
Yes.
looking at everything. Not that you can fully trust them either. They're humans for the most part. They make mistakes, or sometimes certain loan officers just want to push through deals because it's good for their numbers as well. But they will give you leverage over the seller to some extent. Not that you necessarily want to go in, and be
Yeah.
deceitful or using the bank as an excuse all the time. You want, like we mentioned earlier, you want to build a good relationship with the seller, but having that bank on your side is really advantageous.
Yes.
And that's,
Yes.
James could have insisted with that first bank and just threw his hands up with the seller and said, well, this is how it's got to be. And you're not going to get paid until I make certain profit. But the seller could have also just said, well, screw it. I'm not selling it to you. And we're done, moving on.
Right. Right. Yeah, I
uh,
could not agree more about that point with the bank. They
yeah,
are looking over your shoulder. They do this for a living. They look at these deals for a living. And just like you said, whatever terms and price are in your LOI, expect them to change because the bank says this and that, right? And it's only going to be in your favor as the buyer. Don't be dishonest, right? Tell them, look, like this is all subject to what the bank says, you know, but you're so right. It's such a great position to be in as a buyer.
yeah. And on that point about paying the seller, so I've seen deals where the bank won't even let you pay anything to the seller financing portion until the bank is fully paid off. So it'll be, 3, 4, 5 years to the bank, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 years to the seller. Not shockingly, sellers don't usually like that. They would like to get their loan payments sooner. When I bought my wine and liquor store, I paid both simultaneously, the bank and the seller. However, there were clauses in the bank financing that if I missed a payment or I went into default, that I would immediately have to stop paying the seller. And the sellers were aware of that as well. They didn't love that either because they had to trust me to an extent. But there's all different scenarios and different nuances to the bank financing when there's seller financing involved as well. Most banks love to have the seller finance a piece as well because it shows that they're confident in the business. So whenever possible, put that right in your LOI and make the seller aware that you're going to be asking for that. I think that's it helps everybody. It keeps them involved. It makes sure it gives the bank confidence, and it spreads your payments out a little bit depending on the interest rates they offer.
I completely agree. Well said.
Yeah. Anything else on the way you structured that deal that you want to share in terms of the financing piece, percentages or anything else like that?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Like, if he's financing $400,000 to you, he is invested in your success, right? So it's very favorable, and that's it.
So I guess, and on that bank thing, knowing, having that issue, however many days in, 30, 45 days in, when the bank kind of said, oh, this is what we need you to do. Do you regret not working with another bank simultaneously? Do you think that would have helped you?
Yeah,
I'm always torn on that, putting your best foot forward with one partner versus trying to keep multiple doors open at the same time.
yeah. No, it wasn't an issue. Being proactive there wouldn't have made a difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like I said, excuse me, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to talk to multiple banks.
Yeah. I've found historically for real estate as well, I talked to a few different banks at the beginning, pick
Yeah.
one, try to go forward with them. I had a situation recently where a bank pulled out at the last minute on me, and it was very frustrating. Kind of made me wish that I was always keeping two doors open at the same time, but at the end of the day, it still worked out. It just delayed for a few weeks. So,
Well said. Well said. I agree.
so you get the financing in place, you get closer to closing, and the 5 months felt like an eternity. Any any tips on how to get through that time period, the waiting, the ups and downs? Like, what were you using that time for?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like the most productive thing I could do was nothing. Like there was nothing I could do. I wake up every day and be like, okay, do what you can to help the deal, and then I would send an email, one or two emails, and then I had nothing to do for the rest of the day. So I just kept my mind occupied with productive things like tennis and reading and paying attention to my real estate stuff, things of that nature. But no, I was just like stuck in Oklahoma. It was the wintertime, and it wasn't the wintertime, no. But I was just bored. I couldn't spend any money, and I was just like sitting there, and it's just so crazy because it's a binary outcome. It's a one-way door. I'm up. Everything about my life is about to change, and so the stakes were high, but it was awesome. It was awesome in retrospect.
Nice. And when, in terms of the closing, related to closing, when did you pick up and move to Jupiter?
So we closed August 20th, and we were on the road August 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And closing August 20th, what was that like? Did you do anything at the business prior to closing? Did the owner tell his employees, or did you meet employees?
Oh, excuse me. No, we didn't do anything proactive at all. We should have, and I tried to, but the seller has his idiosyncrasies. And then there's nothing to report on the closing. We just went to a title company and signed documents, And yeah, and then I showed up on a Wednesday into their conference room and said hello to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most sellers don't really like the buyer to be involved prior to closing, just, in case something goes
Yeah.
wrong. That's pretty normal. If you can get in before closing, great. Start with that transition, start meeting people, start learning the ins and outs sooner. It's a great opportunity, but don't be surprised if a seller won't let you anywhere near the business until you sign all those documents and they get a check.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So nobody had any idea.
So you walk into this conference room and he introduces you to everybody, or did you have to do it yourself?
Yeah, he introduced me. It's my wife and I just said, hi, I'm James. I'm here. I have tremendous respect for everyone in this company, and I'm here to learn. I'm not here to change anything. Um, please don't, please don't fret. Don't worry. Keep the salary isn't going anywhere, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Nice.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's employees during a transition like that are often very nervous. They don't know what's going to
absolutely.
go on.
Yeah,
I'm sure some of them have been there for a long time, been used to the way that things were.
yeah,
Nobody likes change. So,
right.
how many employees are there?
So there's three people that are selling and designing kitchens right now. One of them is the seller. He and I are getting along great. And then we have a production manager who supports all the operations. We have two full-time employees in the shop, one of whom doesn't leave the shop. He builds cabinets. The other is a hybrid, so he's out in the field. Um, sometimes he's in the shop. And then we have 5 installers that we work with very routinely. They're independent, but they're part of us as well.
Nice. So it's a substantial operation. How what was that, so the first couple weeks, so you're about 6 months in now, right?
Yeah.
So what was the first couple weeks like getting to know it? Did you do one-on-ones with people? Did you do team meetings? How did you get to know people?
Yeah, I that's a good question. I was kind of a fly on the wall. I was, you know, I was working with the seller's wife, the bookkeeper, and that's kind of where I put my focus first is because she is 13 years older than him, which is unusual. So, she needed to be retired. So I focused my attention on taking her job of bookkeeper and admin person, that nature. And I focused on other administrative things. I made sure that we had insurance. I made sure that we had the right license plate on the van. I made sure that our credit cards were set up. I made sure we had the employee credit cards. So that's really what I spent the first 2 weeks doing is admin stuff, just checking boxes.
Yeah, that's another thing with doing an asset sale, new entity coming in, you need to update all of those things, make sure they're all active. Insurance is a big one, and
Yeah.
credit cards. A recent podcast had somebody who did a stock sale, so his stuff all stayed the same. However, when he went to up his limits on his credit card, it came to light that the credit card personal guarantee was still under the seller's name, and the credit card Capital One thought he was doing a fraudulent
Yeah.
increase and just shut everything down overnight. So
Yeah.
it was, so all those little things are
All
important
those
to
little
track.
admin things. Yep.
Yep.
I had to create a QuickBooks account from scratch.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So I stayed up all night just like learning how to export and import data into a new QuickBooks account. I thought I could take over theirs. So stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on the note of nervous employees and admin stuff, um, it all goes away, the nervousness, once their paycheck goes through. You know what I mean? Like I just walked up to each one of them, looked them in the eye and said, the most important part of my job is to make sure that you get paid on time. And then our installers started getting paid every Friday via Zelle instead of having to come in and get a check and wait 30 minutes to get their check. So things like that really alleviates stress for the employees.
Money talks.
Right. It's just like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I spent the first couple of weeks doing, paying bills, learning. I didn't do it. if I was the seller in his shoes right there, I would have done a lot more teaching me about the cabinetry and everything. But he was focused on his clients and his business operation. So I was just learning. I was just ingesting information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you learned how to make cabinets? Are you a
No,
professional?
no. I mean, I learned a lot, but I can't make a cabinet. I can't order cabinets. I can't draw a kitchen. No. Um, yeah. And I never wanted to, right? The seller actually himself serves clients, right? And he liked it. But that's not going to be me. I want to be a business owner as opposed to a practitioner. So I've learned a lot, you know. I know more about cabinets than most people, I guess, but not nearly as much as the people that do it for a living out there.
And that is a hurdle that a lot of people struggle with when they're looking for a business is they get nervous that they don't know how to do the thing.
Yeah,
Did that come up for you at all during this process? Did you think about that, I
definitely.
don't know how to make cabinets? What happens if everybody goes away?
Definitely. Yes. Particularly with the seller, you know, like we had an agreement on paper about how long he would stay, but I always knew he wanted to stay longer. He's fit as a fiddle at 64 years old, so he's got a bunch of years left working. Um, but yeah, for a while leading into it, I was nervous, and then once I got there, it sounded like Chinese people talking about cabinets. But now I'm at a point where I'm very comfortable. I know enough that I can staff and I can delegate everything that has to do with cabinetry. In the beginning, I was nervous, but here's what I'll say: if you're listening at home, it's not nearly as bad as you think it is. It's not nearly as daunting as you think it is. Right? Just stay in it. You'll get over the learning curve. It's not going to inhibit you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great advice for everybody is don't get caught up on that. This is one of the reasons that you buy a business instead of starting from scratch, because you have the teams, you have the people in place that know what they're doing, and it doesn't take long to learn enough to hire the right people if you needed to. And that's why I advocate for buying the existing business rather
Yeah.
than if you had to start a cabinetry company from scratch, you'd
Oh my
be at a
God.
huge disadvantage.
Very
Uh,
well said. Very well
and
said.
and then you said something interesting about you wanted to be a business owner. You didn't want to be the practitioner. So it's something in the book E-Myth Revisited, they talk about being the person that loves baking becomes a baker, and they don't ever focus on the business part. They get bogged down in baking more pies and more pies, and the business is constrained by them. James is coming into this as a business owner, never as a practitioner. So he's not limited by the number of cabinets he can make or install or sell in a day. He's, just limited by the number of people that he can hire and put in place. And that has room for a lot more growth when you approach it
Absolutely.
like that.
I read that book. It's fantastic. Yes. And you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And yep, I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so
And by the way,
now.
that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm not working. I'm
Yep.
here 6 days a week. I'm working
Yep.
hard, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm just not serving clients myself. I'm working on the business. I'm not
Yes.
working in the business.
And I want to touch on that too, because there's a lot of people in the business buying space that go out and say, don't go buy yourself a job, buy a business.
Mhm.
But you just said you work 6 days a week on this business. So did you buy yourself a job, and is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, I guess no. I don't have a job. I can do what I
Okay.
want. I don't need to come in
Okay.
tomorrow if I don't want to. So
Okay.
absolutely not. I want to be working full time. You know, I'm living the dream. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, which is something ambitious where I'm in control of my own destiny, and I'll suffer the consequences regardless, or face the consequences regardless. So no, I don't have a job.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I'm not working very
Yeah.
hard, and I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but that's what I wanted. I wanted to work full time.
Yeah. And for me, that's the differentiator is don't let somebody talk you out of buying a job if that's what you want to be doing anyway. So James is in a position where he doesn't necessarily, sounds like with the structure of the deal, he doesn't need to be there working, and it will operate without him, but he wants to grow it. He's ambitious. And so he is there working on
Yeah.
the business, which is a good place to be.
I didn't want a job, but I wanted
Yep.
to work full time. Right.
Yep.
Two very different things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's
Well said.
good distinction. Very
Yeah.
good distinction. How is it, working with the seller? And we don't have to, you can
Yeah.
discuss what you want. And I know he's still an employee. So,
Yeah.
but it is something that comes up quite often with people is the seller doesn't want to stay on. I don't know what I'm going to do. Or the seller wants to be involved day to day for the next 10 years. How, is that a good idea? From your experience so far, how have you found it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it?
Forgive me. Yeah, it's great. So he's a tremendous person. He's ethical, pleasant, polite, gracious. He's never disrespected me, insulted me, lied to me ever. Right. That doesn't mean that there are times where he annoys me, or he doesn't update a calendar, or he doesn't want to use the new CRM. Right. So things like that are going to happen. Right. You just keep those problems into perspective, and then you draw boundaries. So one of the things I told him, I was like, you do not delegate things to me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a problem with your cabinets, you don't call me, right? So even though he's twice my age, I had to draw those boundaries, but as well as I could have possibly anticipated. And he's been forthright. He's been saying, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this. I haven't had a boss or had to answer to somebody in decades, and I am empathetic to that, right? Like, since longer than I was alive, he hasn't had to answer to anybody. He's never had to report things. He's always just kept things in his head, and his wife's been doing the books, and he's never had to he's never had to report on his pipeline before, and he does not like to use technology. To him, it's very painful to learn a new software system. So, and it's just because he's a tremendous person, and it's because I've followed the golden rule. And so it's been an A experience, maybe even an A+ experience, just because of the quality of the person.
Yeah. So that's important note. Quality of the person matters tremendously. And then you were smart to set boundaries right from the start, and probably still have ongoing discussions. Occasionally, I'm sure there's things pop up here and there, but setting those boundaries and making sure you have the right person is key. It's probably not going to work with every seller. That technology piece is important because a lot of buyers, that's one of the areas that we see for improvement in most companies, is adding layers of technology in to make everybody more efficient. And if they haven't been using it and they haven't had a boss in decades, they don't feel the need to. So
Right.
So the new CRM you mentioned, what other changes have you made, and how quickly did you make them after buying?
That's a good question. What other changes have I made? Yeah, like, the best way to describe it is that the seller kept all of the information in his head. He never wrote anything down. He didn't administrate information. So, for example, we have a workshop. There was no structure to the shop. It was just, Keith feels like calling Dwayne and telling him this, and Dwayne, do this instead. All right, Dwayne, do that instead. Right? There was no system, so I created a Google sheet where we're all sharing and talking about the shop build list. Right? Install schedule didn't exist. Right? So I created an Outlook calendar. So now we share stuff on the Outlook calendar, and we have a method for booking things, for booking installations. Things like that. I've changed. I refused to mail checks. Like, look, you tell me, take 4 seconds to tell me your ACH and routing information, and I'll do that. We hired 2 VAs, so I'm training a VA right now to take the accounting stuff and a lot of the admin stuff off my plate. I changed that, and we also hired a VA to support the design staff. Forgive me, some hiring. So not all those employees have been here the whole time, and we've had some turnover on the design staff as well. Cleaned out the showroom. I mean, there was stuff in here that was 20 years old, and I cleaned it out. Um, and then the CRM's on its way. So now I'm 6 months in. I'm at the wheel. I'm going to be dictating things and changing things. And um, so I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Yeah. So nothing too major in the first 6 months.
Right.
What are your plans for growth over the next few years?
Love it. Love it. Love that question. We do nothing to procure business. We're spoiled. Um, we've just been around for so long, and we've been around 44 years. So the phone just rings, Tim. Like, we have more customers than we know what to do with. It's amazing.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm hiring. I'm trying to staff up to meet this demand, because right now like I said, I have more business than we know what to do with. And then just by pulling a couple levers, like a little bit of outreach, an email list, calling builders, doing anything to procure business, just those things alone. I mean, I think I can come close to doubling sales. It's
Oh,
amazing.
nice.
Yeah. And we're on pace to do it this year.
That's awesome. That's a
Yeah,
good position to be in.
I know.
And again, the advantage of buying an existing, profitable, well-known
1,000%.
business,
Yeah.
where
It's
the phone's
priceless.
just ringing. Yep.
Priceless. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Trying to start that from scratch and build up that name. As you said, 40 years.
Yeah.
It's taken him to build this up and
Right.
get to that point.
We
So
have 170 Google reviews, like we have SEO, we have a website, like we have tons of referrals and repeat clients. So
that's
yeah,
amazing.
thank you.
Awesome. And then, so that's growth in terms of revenue. What about profitability? Are you able to maintain profitability or improve that as you go as well?
Um, that's a great question. So margin is not really my goal right now. My goal is
Okay.
growth,
Yep.
right? So my goal is to do 6 million in sales this year and make $1 million off of that, which is not a great margin. It's under 20%. Um, and then another thing is that I'm paying commission on all the sales now, right? So when the seller used to sell cabinets, he didn't have commission when he was doing it himself. So I'm paying commission on everything now. I have a designer on salary, which helps a lot with margin. But I haven't done a lot to pay attention to margin, just because I'm financially free. I don't need more than a couple grand a month out of the business for my wife and I. Excuse me. So margin really isn't the focus, but its growth is the focus. But I definitely do need to maintain a healthy and positive cash flow along the way.
Did you realize that piece about the commission during due diligence when you were analyzing the numbers? And
Yes.
okay,
Yes. Yes, I did know that.
that's a good, just good reminder for anybody out there that is,
Yeah.
when you're analyzing the numbers on a business, there are certain things that an owner or the seller might be doing themselves that you need to account for as a future expense that
Yeah.
that you're going to come
Absolutely.
across.
Like, for example, his wife was the bookkeeper. Well, guess what? I don't get a free bookkeeper, you know? So
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
train with someone in the Philippines to do it.
Oh, so she wasn't on salary or on payroll at all
Exactly. Right.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good catch as well. Always asking what family is working in the business, and even if they
Yeah.
are on the books getting paid, making sure they're getting paid a fair wage, or if they need to be replaced.
Right. And they were
'Cause
honest, they
Yep.
didn't hide anything.
Yeah.
So it was great. I didn't get surprised or ambushed by anything.
Yeah. Any other advice? Any other things that you want to share about the process or about buying a business in general?
Um, Great question. Yeah, I think that any business in this small business world between, you know, a quarter of a million and 2 million in SDE is going to have problems. It's going to have warts, right? If you are waiting for the perfect business, you're not going to find it, because if it was the perfect business, it'd be much bigger. It would have grown by now, right? Um, so you just need to find a circumstance that suits you, right? There's going to be problems. There's going to be um, tons of, there's going to be warts on the business, right? Um, so that's what I would say, is that if you wait for the perfect thing, you're never going to do a deal. one of the best things that happened to me was I took the meeting here at Strappers first when I flew out. And then I was like, well, I don't even need to go on my other meetings. I love it here. But I still went on the other meetings just because I didn't have anything else to do. And it just reminded me like, oh, okay. Like I want to deal with the problems Strappers has. I do not want to deal with these other problems I'm seeing. So it was really good perspective for me to go on those meetings. That's the thing. And then another thing I would say, and I don't mean to discourage anybody, but in this arena, I don't know if you could do a deal and be passively involved. I don't know if that's realistic. I think that you should be mentally prepared to be there every day and make the difference. So those two things. And then I would just do it. Do it. Oh my gosh. Like it is the best, other than who I married, this is the best decision I ever made in my entire life. Do it.
That's awesome.
That's
awesome. Great advice there. When you were going through this process, did you have a mentor, coach, network, groups of people that you were talking to help you see past some of those warts and some of those hurdles? It's very easy to talk yourself out of doing a deal like this because, like you said, there's always going to be reasons to not do it. So, did you have anybody that you were working with?
Yes, and all he did was get in the way.
Okay.
And I'm so glad I didn't listen to him. It was a broker that I had met in 2024 that I made a good relationship with. He tried to talk me out of it, and I didn't listen.
Interesting.
So I'm so glad I didn't listen.
Okay.
But the people that I was really able to lean on throughout the course of the transaction was the broker, the gentleman that brokered the deal. He and I formed a great relationship, and we talked almost every day. I harassed him. I'm like, please, Scott, what's going on?
Yeah.
So we developed a great relationship, and that's who I was able to lean on.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And those, the broker brokering the deal is always a great resource. You do have to remember that they are paid by the seller, which, has its, just to be aware of that. Not that there are great brokers out there that are honest people that just want to get the deal done, that want to help both parties, but there are a handful of unscrupulous ones out there as well. So
Definitely.
When you can lean on them. And I love James's advice of just do it. Just go out there and buy that business.
You could give me the best job in the world, like whatever it is, I would say no. I'd rather run an ice cream shop, like as a business owner. You know what I mean? Like it is the life. It's amazing. Gosh.
Nice.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's I think that's a great way to close this out. If anybody is in need of cabinets or in need of wants to get in touch with you for any other reason, is there a way that they should do that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm on Instagram at Strappers CEO. My email address is james@strappers.com. And that's it. Yeah, we're in Jupiter, Florida, and we service Palm Beach and Martin County. And I'm happy to connect, particularly with GoBundance guys. I'll always have my calendar open for you. And it's been amazing. And Tim, it's been great to speak with you.
It's been awesome to have you, James. Really appreciate that. And I'll put those links in the show notes below. For everybody else out there, if you have a second, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It just really helps us get the word out so more people can find us. Thanks for listening and watching, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.